Hey, welcome to breakout session number 1 in Studio One. Y'all got the family. Yeehaw! Wait, let's yell louder. No, I'm just kidding. What we're doing in there. Hey, we're really excited that you guys are here again and here in breakout session number 1 in Studio One. Really excited to have this crew next to me hanging out. I'm gonna just toss a loaded grenade in their hands and hope that they finish up really well. But we're talking a little bit about is your brand getting lost, and wondering how identity resolution, specifically through programmatic advertising, can really solve a lot of the questions that dealers might have around ROI with programmatic advertising. So we want to first, because I know that I'm looking around, like we got some smart people in here, so we won't spend a ton of time on the education part of this, but want to make sure that we set the ground for what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about both identity resolution and programmatic, and look at some real solutions on how we can drive real business results and understand exactly what's happening. So I'm going to first start with giving everybody just a moment to give their background and jump in. I will pull my phone out as they're doing that, because if you haven't downloaded the app, you can go to your app store right now, head to and just search ASOTU Con, and you can find the session that you're sitting in right now, which is your brand getting lost? And if you hit the little ask button at the bottom, I'll get notified right here on the handy dandy device, and you can ask questions of these wonderful people up here. They're super smart, and I'm just going to hopefully stay out of the way and help them be smart. So we're going to start with Melissa, and we'll just go down the line. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your role and the organization that you work for some background.
Sure. My name is Melissa Cartagena, and I work for AutoNation, and I head up the digital advertising team, which is basically all performance marketing for AutoNation across all of our stores and additional online businesses that we've recently opened up.
Right on. So my name is Steve White, CEO and founder of Clairvoy. Clairvoy specializes in identity resolution and multi-touch attribution.
Nathan Hollenbeck. I'm the Vice President of Marketing with DGDG, and I've been with the company for about 10 years, and I oversee our almost 30-person marketing and e-commerce team.
He skipped over that. How many stores you have again?
We have 17 rooftop locations.
And you have how many people in your marketing team?
Almost 30.
I just want to throw that. I always, whenever he says that, people, they just kind of skip over it. But just recognize that if you're anybody in here, that's a great encouragement. I'm just saying. Okay. All right. So let's get into it. We're going to start by just kind of providing a little bit of background. And Clairvoy has been so gracious to give us a little bit of background on exactly what is identity resolution, and especially how that relates to when we're getting into things like programmatic and what identities we can start to map.
Yeah, I think the real simple explanation is just basically you're connecting multiple identifiers into one customer profile. So that's the real easy understanding of a very fancy word called identity resolution. And so when we think about, like, traditionally when you think about identity, you think about like name, address, phone number, email. But what identity resolution does is it really kind of connects all of these cookieless and cookie-based identifiers into one kind of unified customer profile.
Awesome. And, I'm sure both Melissa, you and Nathan have been over the last few years, especially when, Google came out and then Apple came out, and it's like, the world is going cookieless. It's dying. Nothing's going to happen. We're never going to know our customers ever again. And you've started to deal with this as that comes up, and you say, with a cookieless future, and when cookieless is happening and we don't have name, address, phone number, and email sitting right there, right. What kind of gap does that create for us?
Basically, you can't produce addressable media. You can't target these people across multiple different channels when the cookie goes away. And I think not only can't you target people, you can't measure the effectiveness of those campaigns.
And 50% of it now is already cookie. Like 50% of online users are already cookieless today. So
correct.
It already exists. It's just a matter of, is it going to get worse? And what are you doing to protect yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a problem before with just Safari in general. And, our the bulk of our dealerships are in the heart of Silicon Valley, and so a tremendous amount of our traffic is mobile. Most of that mobile comes from iPhones, and so that was just a complete missing piece of our whole retargeting and remarketing strategy.
Well, yeah, and it's not just Safari of old, but even more recently, there's even more identity issue with even within the App Store, with everything, with the
Mobile ad IDs.
Yeah, with mobile ad IDs, and now then the App Store has do not track involved, and so we can't see user behavior across. So it just becomes more and more difficult when you're only relying on third-party cookies to create retargeting, which is typically the way the industry has gone at this retargeting and even the reporting. Melissa, at Auto, you're dealing with so many dealerships. Did you start to see gaps, or did you feel prepared in the identities and the the resolution of that and the reporting? In the last
I feel
few
more
years?
prepared in this last year than I have throughout my career doing this, because when we initially started doing programmatic media, it was in 2014, and there was gaps everywhere. Even then there were gaps, but now I feel definitely better because we definitely know that we need to go after our first party data, and we need to map those out. We need to find visitors that are not on our sites and bring them back in through our prospecting efforts. And we're able to do that with identity resolution through the data that we have.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the data that we can get and acquire and map in so that we are resolving these data points then.
Yeah, so I think kind of going back to this slide, this is really kind of the heart of it is, making sure that you're taking your first party data and enriching it with all of these different identifiers. So a couple of them up here are like a ramp ID, which is from LiveRamp, and so that's a cookieless identifier. You've got UID 2.0, which is from the trade desk, and then enriching it with the mobile ad IDs and the IP address as well. And so those are the types of identifiers that really are kind of powering identity resolution across different channels and enabling cookieless targeting and measurement.
Yeah, and it's not just about the identity resolution, but then the identity enhancement, right? Because once you want to start and segment and target these based on your business goals, that takes a lot of work too. When we're plugging in not just the resolution, but also the enhancement, what are the additional things that we're mapping to some of these identities at this point?
There could be a lot.
Give us some examples of what maybe you guys are working with.
We partner with Epsilon, and they have over 7,000 attributes that they could potentially match on top of working with 13,000 publishers. So they have the ability to know when someone has logged in. So it's deterministic. Mm-hmm. They know they've logged in, but they also know and can map back to an address. So because you have all of that information, you get a much tighter targeting across your entire program.
Yeah, awesome. Were you about to say something?
No.
Awesome. All right, so that's the identity resolution side. Let's get into just a little bit of programmatic. Nathan, can you just walk us through what is programmatic to you? Where are the placements that you're working with? And then we'll get after that. We'll kind of get into how identity resolution and programmatic work together to solve problems for a dealer.
Sure. I guess maybe I'll start with our overarching marketing goal for DGDG. So, only about 25% of consumers actually stay loyal to a specific OEM brand. And so if they want to do that, obviously it's my goal to help facilitate that. But that means that 75% of the people that we sold cars to and serviced their vehicles are switching to another brand. And so how can I be agnostic to that and just facilitate that need for them? So for us, we're trying to use programmatic to understand if someone, say, has a lease that's coming due on their Mazda in 90 days, and now they're on our Ford website and they're shopping for a vehicle there, understanding that they get to have that experience with us. We can sell them all these different brands, and we can facilitate all these different brands for them so that they stay within the DGDG ecosystem. So in order to do that, we had to resolve all these identities of all of our customers to be able to follow them across multiple mediums, whether it's a display ad while they're browsing and doing research for a car, whether they're watching a video, connected TV at their household. We just want to make sure that DGDG is always the place that they are considering to buy or service their vehicle at any time.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, because there was actually a question here that that was asked, like, how do you think about not just a unique identifier for a dealership or the identity resolution of a single person on one website, but doing that across a regionally focused group that's trying to understand a single goal of the group in line with one customer instead of a store with a customer? Like, what did that mapping look like?
So we ultimately have mappings for each of the individual stores, right? And so if they go back to Hyundai's website and we see them as a visitor there, we're going to remarket them with that brand. But then we also have a huge campaign that is just for DGDG that is branding for the group. And we follow them with that message as well. Again, in the event that they're going to be one of those 75% that are moving to another brand, we want to make sure that they're using DGDG as their place to shop where they can see all these different vehicles.
So essentially always keeping top of mind.
Yeah.
Keeping your brand top of mind all the time.
So, so is that a focus for you at AutoNation too, where you're looking at like regionally located, unique identifiers that allow you to target the person based on individual shopping behaviors, and then global brand type of campaigns?
Well, we're regional, definitely regional, and think about how complex that is. What you just said, it's a mouthful, right? Like, it's super complex, and when you have to figure out what message do I send, do I make sure that the brand is present, how is that going to impact all my other media? I mean, there's a lot to consider: the rules, the regulations, the mandates. You have to consider all of those things as you're building it out, and it gets more and more complex. But once you have all the pieces in place, and you know the signals are coming in, your media is getting activated across your data. And that's a good place to be. So we're definitely focused on that, 100%.
Yeah. So when we say like media activated across your data, there's the difference between like first party data and third party data. Mm-hmm. And now we've got this like almost in between of the identity resolution of all of that, right?
Yeah.
How do you begin taking that and implementing each of those data pieces? Let's say like we're not gonna, just so you know, like 2:00 this afternoon, we're doing the CDP. We should have probably done that one first and then this one. So if you want to come back for that one, we'll just reverse the ideas and the topics here. But let's just assume that we've started to map a lot of our first party data and started to resolve it against what's coming in unidentifiable or identifiable personas. If we've done that, now because everybody said retargeting, right? But where are we executing that actually in multiple ways so that it's not just this like simple VIN-specific social media retargeting, which we all heard in 2016, right? What are the things that we're able to leverage that data into?
Yeah, I think in Nathan's case, we're doing the identity resolution for him and then pushing those audiences, his first party audiences, right into the trade desk. And the power of that is he's able to do that always on branding, to be able to speak to his customers every single day, particularly when you think about like CTV. I was doing the math. Let's say it's like a $40 CPM. So basically it costs 4 cents to put a TV ad in front of one of your customers. I mean, that's a pretty good value when you think about being able to keep your brand top of mind.
Yeah.
So.
I can't remember which of you it was mentioning when we were talking beforehand, was like brand top of mind is a thing that we're always trying to figure out, and we're trying to figure out the right time and the right message for the right person, right?
Right.
And a lot of times, historically, we've always thought, the only way to do that is one-to-one messaging, right? But some of this actually solves that almost to a one-to-one relationship, so that you can have right time, right place, right message, right person, with not just specific text or email campaigns, right? I think, Melissa, you were talking a little bit about how you're envisioning like programmatic meeting that one-to-one relationship.
So it gets super close to like the almost dangerous zone when you're doing the identity resolution component, because now you actually have a person. It's no longer a device. It's no longer any of that. It's a person that's been labeled. In my world, it's called a core ID. And then you can follow that person. You can match unidentified people and follow them offline to bring more people in. So it's kind of a crazy world when you think about it, but there's something to be said about doing that, and not just for retargeting purposes, but at the vehicle level. You do the VIN level, but then you have all this brand. Then you have all of this awareness that's creating demand that's fueling your lower funnel. So it all works together in a cohesive manner.
I would say, and that's what we found exactly. I mean, if you look at some of the click trails that we've got, like one of the points is the fact that like 90% of the time, the trade desk impression happened before the lead was ever submitted, and then 51% of the time it was the first touch. So what that means is that Nathan is helping to push his customers in market, which is super powerful.
Have you seen, as you've started to get closer and closer to the right identities with the right message, have you seen like organic and direct impressions on brand drive up?
Yeah, I mean, you actually see a couple examples of that, and I think a couple slides here, but you'll be able to see like we served up an impression, then all of a sudden they do a Google search, they end up at our website, then they start shopping at different marketplaces, and then end up coming back to our website and then submitting a digital retailing lead or something like that. But some of these click trails are like 90 days long, and so the fact that we're constantly touching them throughout that process as they're doing their research, like what better place to be advertising to your own customers, right? You already paid probably $100 or so to acquire that person initially, and then to pay 4 cents to put a TV ad in front of them in their household is like fantastic, right?
Well, yeah, and when you think about this is like life cycle of a customer 101, right? Because now you're bringing your customers back into the flow, right? And getting them earlier than the normal signals would be, right? Because Facebook said, like, if you were just to take and go, I want to get customers that are interested in purchasing a car, they're already deep enough in funnel in any Google signals or Facebook signals or any other signals that are like post interaction events, right? Like they've already started interacting online or started creating behaviors that mean I may be looking to purchase. But like this one right here, right? This is one. Talk about it, because this one like kind of blew my mind. This
is powerful because so basically just to kind of orient us on the data. So we onboarded, I think it was like 6 or 7 years of sales data and prospect data. So this is the audience that we're targeting, and then we've got our tracking code on Nathan's websites, and then also the tracking code on the marketplace websites as well. And so we can get this rich consumer purchase journey. And so that first touch point, actually 4 days later, that person then visited a marketplace website.
And you probably can't read, but that's a programmatic video ad or display ad, something like that?
I think that's a video ad.
Probably video?
Yeah, so that's the power of it. And so like each of the different yellow lines, those represent about like sometimes like 5, 10, 15 impressions. So it's not just like one ad that happened. So it was multiple ads in a given day.
That's unbelievable. So like as I'm thinking about this, I'm taken back because so much of auto historically has been like fish in the water, everyone shoot. Right. And then like you got the whole lake is shooting at fish in the water. Right. And this is a strategy that allows you to be out in front of your customers more often at the right, and almost create the consumer purchase journey. Right. So you're owning loyalty. Right. Yeah. Are you seeing a more loyal customer across brands at this point?
I don't know if I would say that.
Okay.
I don't know if you hear people say all the time that, consumers are not brand loyal, and you see that all the time. But so I wouldn't say yes to that. But what's important about this is you say fish in the water. Everybody is so focused on the lead and the sale, but the reality is not a lot of people are filling out lead forms these days, and that's a reality. Yeah. So this gets in front, and the idea that 7% maybe of people that submit leads and 93% don't, I mean, that 93% can still be exposed to an ad. So when they walk in to buy that car, even if they didn't do anything else, they were exposed. And that's where we have to drill in to really start to do the measurement properly, because you can't look at CTV and display the same way that you're going to look at search. It isn't the same.
Okay, so talk a little bit about how you are measuring that. Like what are the measurement metrics that you're attributing so that you can see business outcomes at some level when you're talking about programmatic media?
We look heavily at offline sale a lot of times. I'm sure you guys probably do the sales match back and all of that to make sure that your advertising is being seen. So we do that. And I think if you're not doing that, then you're not doing this wisely. So you should be considering that as part of the process.
Yeah, I'd say I'll chip in one more. Like we look at direct sales. So someone that saw a Capital Hyundai ad and then bought a car at Capital Hyundai. But then we look at the indirect sales from all of the branding that we do across DGDG, and that number is dramatically larger than the one-to-one at the store level. So we see people that are cross-shopping that go from Hyundai to Mazda or Mazda to Subaru or whatever, and we give them this huge, large blanket of advertising, depending on what their activity is online, depending on what data that we have on them from whether they're a previous service customer or sales customer. So the indirect number is dramatically larger than the direct number.
I think it was like 80%.
Yeah.
So it was like 20% of the people that saw an ad for a store bought from that store. 80% of the time they bought at a different store in the group.
And are you guys, sorry, I'm going to ask a question.
That's amazing. Ask her a question. She's like, tell me more.
Are you guys looking also at not just like the click, you're looking at the view through as well? So that
This
you
is
can-
100% view through.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is looking at the actual ad exposure and mapping the ad exposure logs and then weaving those into the purchase
Yeah.
journey.
Because we've seen, like, if we were going to look at a cost per lead associated across the board, because that's a metric that everybody looks at.
Yeah.
But if you're to add the view through and the actual click, sometimes those cost per leads can be a lot less than even a search cost per lead, which is
Yeah.
pretty crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, like our latest numbers, I think $100 cost per sale, sub $100, and sub $100 cost, I'm sorry, sub $10 cost per lead.
And that's from the direct attribution on that channel.
Yeah, so they so they saw the ad, and then they later went and submitted a lead at the website like 15 days later.
Yeah.
Or maybe not even submitted the lead
Yeah,
and
like-
just came in and bought the car.
Yeah,
right.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, this is like I think one of the misnomers, and I think this also that it gets carried from linear TV. Like programmatic gets the like stomach ache debt from linear TV, right? Because back when we stopped doing TV, everybody was like, "Oh, thank goodness, now we can attribute everything," and then everybody comes back in and is like, do programmatic display in OTT, and everybody's like, I don't know what if it's 50%'s working, but I don't know which 50%, right? We get all that type of deal. And now we're getting a lot closer to not just like ad targeting, but also attribution and then business outcomes based on that and understanding your cost per car sold. Nathan, as this journey has been going on for you all, what are some of the biggest challenges that you had along the way of understanding the technology or utilizing the resources or data? What are some of the challenges?
I think for us, it was probably like partnerships are really important to us, and not just finding another vendor to add on to, the accounting list, right? And so people that were going to help us walk down this journey of what it was that we were trying to accomplish. I think being able to see this level of attribution and understanding like how much of each of the marketplaces playing a role in the sales process, looking at things from a multi-touch attribution level standpoint.
Can you talk to that just a minute? Because I think that's also a misnomer in our industry that's like, you don't need third parties, but you've seen a massive impact from some of that because of this attribution model, right?
Well, I think it's just like showing more validity to it, right? Like now you're able to see the full purchase journey, whether it started with us or not. Like there are some instances where they were shopping on a marketplace and they're our customer, and now we serve them an ad impression. And so now they're like, oh yeah, I bought my last car from DGDG. I should go check that out, right? So like whether we were the first one to serve them an impression or not, like we want to be sure that they are thinking of DGDG as the place to shop for their next vehicle if they're in market for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have another question I'm going to ask. All right.
Thanks, Kyle.
So let me think through this for a minute, because when you're seeing the marketplace in the mix, are you doing more of like, I'm focused more on messaging the consumer than I am about connecting with like a private marketplace deal, like where I'm forcing my ad within the third party environment or within these marketplace environments versus I'm just going to chase the individial.
We're
When I-
chasing the individual.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And I love
the thing.
that. Well, that's huge because then because if you know that customer's in market and they're already your customer, then go keep them, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the big piece. What's Melissa, like, or Nathan, either one of you or maybe both of you, like what's next on the map for you all on creating these better customer journeys? Because in my mind, this is like, how do we get to 100% retention, right?
I feel like that's like the CDP conversation.
She's like, 2:00 p.m. in this room. No. Yeah. Well, then I'll ask Nathan because he doesn't get to talk this afternoon when we're with two other people, but because you guys have been implementing Salesforce Marketing Cloud for a hot minute, which sits on a CDP-esque element, right? Mm-hmm. What's been the journey with that, and how are you leveraging? Because a second ago you were like, well, as long as you do it was like 9 things you listed off that you're executing across a service and sales marketing, journey. And most people that would kind of blow their minds, or they're like, oh yeah, so my agency hopefully does that, right? How did you map all of that to make sure that it was all happening correctly? Like, what did that process look like?
Well, it was working with Steve and his team to onboard all the data, the leads from Vin Solutions, sales customers from CDK. We even worked on a custom integration with Marchex, our call tracking company, to put that data in there, and then all of the website data. So it was feeding all of that into there. And then I think the next step for us is bringing that data into email marketing campaigns and going like that much further into like more. Not necessarily one-to-one, but really targeted messages to targeted people within the database.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have something.
No, I was gonna for the nerds, that
I want to see the nerd thing.
This is another kind of fascinating journey. This is I think about 130 different touch points along the way, and you can see that the first part, I believe, started with a marketplace, and then another programmatic ad, and then so the marketplaces that are in this mix, those are multiple marketplaces. That's just not one marketplace. So that's being able to track all those folks across there. But it was interesting when you look at this journey. They didn't fill out a lead until like the last week or so. So it's like being able to speak to that consumer along the way and know their journey. I think is just super powerful.
Have either of you worked with your sales operations teams to allow this to help more of your sales operations understand the path to the customer purchase, or no? Or you're like, that's a great idea, Kyle. Hold on.
I've thought about it, but we haven't done that. We do other things in terms of a customer 360 kind of view, but it doesn't include this information in here, which I feel like is really important to include.
Well, this is what I'm thinking is like we always think about when that person like submits a leads or come in the showroom. We talk about like the time to purchase or the time to sale. And I've started to see over the last 3 to 4 years, especially, some of this is because of inventory dynamics and people wanting to pull the trigger really quickly. But I've started to see shortened timelines. And every CRM that I've had access to or looked at with someone, it's gone from like average days of sale to like from anywhere from 5.5 to 6.5 down to 3.5. Now, I don't know if that's because we have better processes or because we're seeing people just shopping more deeply earlier in the process before actually engaging with a dealership. Have you seen that or no?
Well, I mean, like in general, like napkin math. I mean, a third of our customers come from online internet leads. A third come from phone conversations, and then a third just walk in the door. So, and the people that walk in the door, they're not like, oh, I was just driving by. Like they were doing tons of research as you're seeing, right? And then they come in when they feel comfortable with making that purchase decision. So, even walk-in customers, they're still doing tremendous amounts of online research before they come in to interact with your business.
Now, obviously, this is at the point of an ad service or anything OTT display, anything like that, programmatic. Are you leveraging some of this this information to personalize the journey more deeply into the process of the sale, or is that kind of the 2:00 question? Yeah. She's like, don't blow the 2:00. I'm like, I'm so excited for 2:00. For Clairvoy, like what's because we're continuing to press into less and less tracking, right? Less and less identity resolution opportunities. How are you looking at the horizon of that and ensuring and how can dealers maybe be preparing to make sure that they don't get caught kind of with the pants down as more of this happens?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I mean, there's two types of cookies. There's a first-party cookie and a third-party cookie. First-party cookies are not going away. Third-party cookies, they are, by next year at some point. So
explain that just a little bit. So first-party cookie is, third-party cookie is. Examples.
So a first-party cookie is like your analytics cookie. And the cookie that remembers your password and stuff like that. So those are not going to go away. It's the cross-domain tracking cookies, third-party cookies are what is going away, which will totally blow up retargeting. So like even today, like you can't retarget a Safari user if you're leveraging third-party cookies.
Most companies today, I feel like a lot of companies, I won't say most, but a lot of them are still relying on third-party cookies.
Yeah.
So
it's a dirty little secret.
If you're going after device and you're going after third-party cookie, you're in trouble next year.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I think that's a big deal. Like that's a takeaway. If there's a dealer in the room or even an industry partner, a salesperson at an industry partner that's saying like, "Oh, we're targeting all your customers," right? It's like, okay, go into analytics, search how many customers are coming from mobile and how many of those are Safari users or iOS users on a desktop, right? That are using Safari and soon Chrome and soon all the other browsers, right? I mean, if they're using Opera or anything like that, they're definitely not getting tracked. So, watch out for that. Ask the questions. How are you retargeting? Because then if they are retargeting utilizing these third-party cookies, then they're only getting Chrome users or Chrome users on desktop, and that's a small percentage of your user base, right? And so leveraging your first-party data into advertising is extremely important. Right?
And that's like your best in-market audience. I mean, these are people that are shopping on your website. I mean, and so making those investments, I think, is critical. And I think, one of the important, takeaways is that you need to lean in and make a commitment to invest in your first-party data, identify ways that you can do identity resolution, but make those investments. I think is one of the big takeaways. And really, I mean, kind of what we're doing with Nathan is we're building like, an internal private identity graph with his data. And so it's like the more that you can lean in and make those investments, you're going to be far, far ahead and ready.
And it's not really like when we talk about making the investment, right? Like every year at DGDG, we do an executive summit for all the senior leadership within the organization. And so at the end of last year, I'm trying to explain to general managers identity resolution and all this technology stuff that we're doing. And they're like, crickets, no one really understands what I'm talking about. So the mic drop moment was, I was like, our advertising budget for this year is $12.5 million. This year now is $10 million. So we saved $2.5 million by not just going, we still have general market plays to do general market awareness for people that maybe aren't in our database, but we saved a tremendous amount of money by going and doubling down on our first party data.
It's just way more efficient.
Yeah.
This might just be a crickets question too. I'm going to go to the questions. We got about 10 minutes left. If you guys start asking more questions, you got to upvote the ones you actually want to talk about. This is like Reddit, all right? Are you getting this customer information back into your primary databases at this point, or has that still been an issue, like CRMs, DMSs?
So we have.
Okay.
But we have an infrastructure that was built a long time ago with our customer database. So we get all that information in there.
Nice.
So we're working on that with the launch of Salesforce, which finally happened in our first store just last week. But the goal is to now be able to incorporate all that information back to where, we can consume a lot more than just what's in an ADF lead now and put that sort of information up front for our sales team.
So when did you think Salesforce was going to be installed, and when did it actually get installed?
We took a pretty major detour. We spent about a year going through the development process, and it was a lot of whiteboarding and theoretical. And so we were really scared to take something that was completely theoretical and put it into a dealership and potentially blow up a profitable enterprise. So we were working on a separate project for vehicle acquisition. And so we decided to detour from the stores and build a process over the course of a year for a website that we built where people could enter in some basic information about their vehicle and get a quote of what we would pay for their vehicle right there to buy it. And learned a lot through that experience of seeing data actually flowing through. It wasn't just theoretical whiteboard. And so Then we came back to the drawing board this year. So, I mean, it was a 2.5 year long journey overall, but, we spent a year doing just vehicle acquisition and then, like 8 to 9 months doing the in-store process.
That's awesome. I'm going to ask Melissa, when you're thinking about branding versus retargeting, or like new customer branding versus in-market shopper retargeting, do you have kind of like a goal ratio as far as spend and marketing dollars attributed to those?
That's a good question. So we try to focus on, that's a hard question to answer because it varies by store. We have a lot of different stores, but we do try and focus at least, I'm going to say 50-50, because we have to do the prospecting to generate the demand. So you've got to have that branding out there to pull people in. So maybe 50-50, but it really just depends.
Yeah.
That's a hard question.
Yeah, so it's very, very dependent for us as well. And a lot of it is based on co-op. And so how can we creatively use a co-op dollar? And then ultimately, what are the stores that get the most co-op dollars and also sell the most vehicles, where we can tack on more of the DGDG branded marketing expense and get to the right cost per sale metrics from a gross and net standpoint.
Yeah. Steve, one of the things, we're talking a lot about sales right now, but much of branding can drive service as well. Are you seeing similar patterns in the service side, and are you matching back not just sales, but service visits at this point?
We have not done that yet. But yeah, I believe that'd be very powerful.
He's like, and who's up next? No.
We're actually in the process of doing that right now.
Yeah.
And we've got some unique tracking now through the appointment center. So we're able to get like down to the detail, which I'm excited about because that's up and coming very soon.
They're getting all reorganized on me now that you guys are upvoting them. I had another question I wanted to ask here. I upvoted my own. This was one. Thinking about like not just what we're targeting, but also what we're not targeting. Is this same identity resolution being applied to pulling people out of campaigns in order to save budget at that point?
Suppression.
Yeah, suppression. And I think when you think about suppression is possible, but when you think about like the fact that there's only like 200 sales, like in a given store, it's like at some point you have to ask yourself, is it really worth it to go through those extra loops, to jump through those extra hoops? Certainly doing lead suppression, but at the sales suppression, I think sometimes it's not, the juice isn't worth the squeeze in that regard.
But at the lead suppression
would you
side.
agree?
Well, and I think it depends on the message that you're trying to put out. So like a good example, a lot of the DGDG messaging that we've been doing has been around sell to DGDG and how like in a few minutes you can get an offer to sell your vehicle. So maybe they didn't end up trading in their vehicle and they still have they have another vehicle in their home they're trying to sell. Maybe there's another vehicle that they need to buy for the household. So still putting out a relevant DGDG brand message, I think, is still important. Right.
Yeah, like I wouldn't suppress based on somebody that wants to sell a car for that same reason.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't. We do utilize some suppression though in our advertising, but we're very careful about how long that would last.
Right.
But since we know at a household level, we can suppress one and not suppress another ID because we know who lives in the household.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other part of suppression is then you remove the opportunity of having an always on brand message, right? And we're talking about like, how does your brand not get lost? Right. Because I think that's like, because you can't do this and in 3 months save $2.5 million for your 18 store group, right? Like it takes time to get there because you have to have enough impressions on brand across a region in order to have enough awareness to continually drive residual value and also have enough identities in your resolved identities database to be able to continue to target that and make the most efficient use of your dollars, right? Is that something that you're seeing? Like it's like SEO, right? It's like this is a long tail approach, right? Yeah.
It definitely is. Yeah. I mean, to Nathan's point, I mean, like, sometimes it's a 90-day plus journey where you've got to keep your brand top of mind.
Yep.
So.
Cool. Are there any other questions that I didn't get to that someone's like, if I don't get this answered? Yes.
I just have a quick one that kind of came up as you guys were on the data, but and I think there was more data. Is it difficult to identify if a car was triggered? Because like, I'm still a fan of like the car as a star. If you don't have it, you're not going to get a sale no matter what kind of ad you put out. So like, as you're going through some of these data sets with Clerical, have you ever kind of like posed the question internally of like, was it the car that maybe changed the
So basically, is it the car that's winning the sale, or is it the brand that's winning the sale? And how do you identify the difference?
like point to transactional data plots and prove that changed the tone of the purchase decision, not necessarily the end.
Yeah, so actually what's interesting, if you look at like the far right of the table that's on there, you'll actually see some of the different creatives that are on there. And so it'll say like where the person purchased the car and then what was the ad impression that they saw, whether it was DGDG, whether it was Capital Hyundai, Capital Ford, whatever. And so you'll see people that like they bought from Capital Hyundai, but they were in our Ford database. And so, you know, we started marketing to them there, and then they ended up on our website, and now we're hitting them with Hyundai messaging, and now they buy the Hyundai and things like that. So it's the where to buy moments that you're trying to really tackle in that consumer journey.
So you switch messaging mid customer journey essentially.
Well, we'll end up hitting them with both because we don't know.
You don't know
We
where
don't
they're
know
gonna
when
end
they're
up.
gonna what they're
Exactly.
gonna end up with. But
happens
if
to
they're
us.
in a Hyundai and they're now shopping on Ford's website, like they might still end up with a Hyundai. They might end up with the Ford, and so I want them to understand again, DGDG can facilitate either of those transactions for you. Just don't go to the other Ford dealership that's our competitor, right? So.
Yeah, I'm going to ask this one last question and have both of you answer it as briefly as possible. But a lot of, I'm looking around the room, I'm seeing dealer groups represented, and a lot of dealer groups are still going through this transition of how much brand do I place at the dealer group and how much do I do like locally. I know AutoNation is maybe a little bit different because it was like an original thing back when AutoNation in the late 90s was started. Like, we're going to create this, you know, so, but I'm still still a struggle with like individual stores. Like, how do you make sure that everybody's happy with here's the global brand, here's the local brand, and that they don't feel like anybody's robbing Peter to pay Paul or getting the bad end of the deal type thing?
We have something at DGDG that we call guided discovery. And we guide our dealerships to discover what it is that we're going to do with our marketing play and things of that nature. So at the executive summit that I mentioned earlier, that's where we get together. We spend about 10% of the time talking about what we did in the previous year and what went well, but like 90% of it is what we want to do in the coming year. And so everyone is on the same train, going in the same direction together, and we all agree that it's the right decision for the group.